saying it's part two, bro. Welcome back. You know what I'm saying? First time it was with yours, now it's with mine, but the same subject matter. Let's talk about 6 months later from the last time we spoke at your podcast, or was that The Real Deal? I don't recall. Let's talk. You've now done $5 billion worth of restructuring, right? How have you seen now the strategies change, what you're seeing out there? And as I was telling the audience before, 20% of now in just New York, and we could talk about the rest of the country, most loans are now in special servicing and distressed, or 1 out of 5 loans. What have you learned?
So, thanks for having me on the show. Obviously.
Welcome back, of course.
Pleasure to be here. Shana Tova to those that celebrate the new year. A sweet and happy new year to everybody. I like to start from the ground up.
Word up.
And, we spoke at The Real Deal. And we did The Real Deal, I believe, sometime in May. Okay. Which was roughly about, 7 months ago now? About 7 months. And it has gotten to a place where my firm is still restructuring these assets. So, look, when you're restructuring $5 billion of debt and equity, it doesn't restructure itself in 2 seconds. It is always a restructuring going on. You modify something, you put something on the back burner, you settle a claim, you settle a matter, you follow? And what I've learned is how you need to know how to pivot. You need to know how to pivot, how to bob, how to weave, how to not get yourself necessarily time, but understand that at some point it may not be feasible and you may need to pivot some more in about a year or two. So yes, it's about getting time, but as you're getting time, the lender is now having time. So the build on the lender is stressful as well. So it's not about who wins. It's about the last man standing. So I think what I've learned is endurance.
A war of attrition, so to speak.
A war of attrition, yes. And what attrition is doing in the restructuring atmosphere for me is showing my firm and showing my clients or our clients that there's definitely a way out. It takes time.
Well, let's give case studies. Do it from a case study perspective. You don't name a client, don't name a cost, the location, nothing. But what are some outcomes that have occurred that you're seeing? And by the way, the outcome might be more time. So what are some of what have you seen over the last 7 months?
Let's define outcome. Let's define win. Okay. And win is defined, excuse me, let me turn off my phone. Win is defined as getting to zero from a negative place, negative, say 10, negative 5, negative 4 to 0. And sometimes you can get to 1. I'll give you a case study. I have a client who has a mixed use commercial residential property, and their note was bought. And for 3 years or 2.5 years, we were fighting them. We were putting out actions for lender liability claims. We were motioning to dismiss for failure to, foreclose on the note for failure of standing. And
so that's a strategy to gain leverage.
That's a strategy to gain leverage.
Right. And so you said, instead of just sitting there like a sitting duck, you're going to retain me. I'm going to find a weak point, even though we don't know yet.
You challenge that weak point. So part of being an attorney is faithfully, in good faith, within ethical bounds, extend, modify, or interpret the law in a way that the law moves it forward. For example, a big policy term is constitutionality of gun ownership. There are a lot of cases right now that are ongoing about the Second Amendment to bear arms. And that amendment is being fought through the courts in different cities, states, and the country as a whole. And at the top, what bubbles up is, I guess, the moral law the regulation law that is in the books and how the Constitution is shaped. The same way, if you get really, really micro on the bankruptcy and restructuring level, just because you may have a weak claim, it doesn't mean that you may lose. It doesn't mean that it may win. What's important for an attorney is how that interpretation is made by a judge to inform your future cases. So
wait, let's go back. So you have that mixed use case.
Right.
You used that philosophy in order to buy time. You said now it's 3 years that you were able to extend to find time to formulate leverage and a strategy. So what has been the outcome?
So the outcome is that our client is getting paid out, and they're getting paid out a sum. I can't say what sum that is. And it's an excellent result because the client is able to come out under from the debt and start their life over.
Well, let's put that into perspective. So you're saying that a client came to you, a lender is foreclosing on them, right? And that would mean that most likely they have some type of carry guarantee. Correct. Or they have a personal Correct. Guarantee. So the sort of numerical quantity is negative X amount of dollars
right.
to zero versus a positive outcome.
Right.
And you're saying the win, or even getting over the 3 years, getting to zero would be a huge win, meaning, or limiting the liability you're seeing, like really wealthy clients of yours maybe even can cut a check and get out, but to get to zero or maybe negative a little. And you're saying, no, we're actually able to get to an outcome that was plus. Now, it's not plus, you saved the asset and they are, pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, but they actually got a check out of it. That's like a rabbit out of a hat in my understanding of your space.
Well, yes, and it's going to happen more often than not because because there's a value to the time, and there's a value to the litigation, and there's a value to tethering the law. And what lenders do not want when it comes to the third prong, which I just mentioned, which is the tethering of the law, which is the interpretation of the law, you don't want the law as a lender not to be on your side. I'll give you another example. There was a mixed-use commercial grade property in the hundreds of thousands of square feet where there was a foreclosure that had begun, and we successfully opposed it based on an issue of fact of standing. And it was in the multiple millions. And what we've gained there is the ability to create a lot of time. But also, because of the tether or the modification of the law or the interpretation of the law through the judge's eyes, now that decision will inform other cases when, in my experience, that I'm taking on as really a foreclosure, business litigator, and restructurist. Also, what we don't want to forget is you have business partners, whether it be family, cousins, institutional investors, co-GPs, LPs. We're also business litigators, and those types of decisions inform those LPs about what to do next. For example, when we had the decision that had come down based on that win, what did the win mean? It means that the dust for the second settles, and you get to have some real true breathing room about the next cases that are what's going to be moving forward in that matter. So you get to play negotiation from at the moment, right? Because it's so far away, the foreclosure is so far away, from a moment of leverage. And then you have an open line of communication with the lender. And in the same way, the lender calms down as well and has the ability to talk to the borrower. And that's where results occur. And how does business litigation get mixed in with foreclosure defense and restructuring is because of the consequence of that case.
Right, it's the extreme. So now you can come back to make a move with
this
the
new
business
partners and the business and say, okay, hey guys, it's no longer $40 million and we're upside down by 20 and we're about to fight and send each other demand letters. Now we're in a place. Now we're in a place to discuss, because now the dust has settled and now we can say, okay, no more fighting between us. Let's figure out what the value of the property is worth. And let's figure out what we can come together and settle this claim for.
Well, that's just directing the energy sort of elsewhere off of your client, so to speak.
Right. Well, so what feels impossible at the moment and crushing at the moment, you need two elements. The first element is reinvestment, either to the asset or into the partner. And number two, reinvestment into, I guess, the fighting and the time. And eventually you do get paid out. Eventually you do not get foreclosed. I have seen in the hundreds of millions, clients do get wiped out, because at some point the stakes are so great and they're so high that the ability to come out from under them is quite great. But even in those cases and scenarios, I've had a situation where we took over a matter, a very, very large matter in the hundreds of millions of dollars, where we started negotiating with a mediator as a consequence of our appeal. And in that appeal, it wasn't $35 million problem. It was like a $10 million problem, or like a $5 million problem, or like a $30 million problem that we wanted to settle at. Ultimately, leverage is born in litigation, and understanding is also born in litigation. You just have to know how to exercise that leverage in a way that is non-temperamental to the lender or the borrower. It is not existential to the lender or the borrower, and it builds an equilibrium of trust between the lender and the borrower to have those discussions. Then, as a consequence of that, we as business litigators fighting with limited liability companies, corporations, shareholder disputes, derivative actions, in business litigation, can say, look at that example, let's resolve it here now as a consequence of the value changing. And that, just as a last thought, that can come across all lines of businesses, which would be, a business that has a merchant cash advance agreement that they have to settle, or a business that has, a bagel business, or a private equity business.
Can it also inform preemptively how to then structure documents moving forward, which is not this conversation, but I'm just saying, right? It informs how you're going to move forward appropriately. But let me ask you a question. You have a crystal ball. What is going to happen now, right? We were talking about it before. Look at this distress bubble coming. You're seeing it. We're not talking about long-term debt. We're talking about bridge financing and this bridge debt. Do your business plan. Give me your money back. What do you think is going to happen over now the next 6 months? Interest rates came down a quarter point. What do you think happens with the amount of distress, the way that the courts are looking at distress, and the way that banks are looking at distress over the next 6 months?
I think that if your question is what's going to happen to the debt, eventually the debt will be settled, modified, terminated, forbeared, and forgiven. And those terms are in somewhat legal terms, but really, that's what needs to happen. There has been an influx of debt that was available at very, very good interest rates. That has now ended. There's a complete reset of the market. I think we spoke about this journey 2 years ago, and we said that last year was going to be the bottom of the market. I think it's not. I think the first quarter is really going to be the bottom of the market, or it's getting to the bottom of the market now.
And do you think that the lenders, no longer trust their client, the borrowers as the custodians of the collateral, and they're looking to take it and figure out something new to do with it. Like we're seeing an influx of opportunities in finishing complete assets that weren't completed yet, or refinancing, or there's more capital that's interested, but that the lender is the client now. It is that the borrower is working with you to get out for the couple dollars, couple shekels to move on, but that the real owners are going to be these lenders, and those lenders have investors and shareholders, and those investors and shareholders are like, yo, go get me the money back, or get me my money back and let's move on. Like, we get it. We lost.
It's excellent that you pocket it that way, because that's exactly what it should be pocketed like. The lenders are losing too. Lenders are taking these assets for what they're worth. No, they've lost. They've lost the asset to what it's worth. So when you lose an asset to what it's worth, you're losing everything up and above that you were promised to be paid. And I keep saying this, and I'll continue saying this. The culprit is not the borrower, because they had good intentions. And a lot of the borrowers that we represent have very good intentions. And they execute on their business plan well. And when I say execute on their business plan, for someone in the audience that's like saying, well, they took on too much debt, they don't know what the hell to do with it. Well, at the time that you took on that debt, there was a business plan you had to execute for that interest rate, and you thought you can execute that plan in 3 years. Now you realize that you can't, but hindsight's 2020. So the value of knowing that today should just simply inform your reasoning for tomorrow. You know, the business ends, you don't end. I don't mean that in the grim way of dying, but just being sad about it. You have to get up and do it again, and do it again in a way that you were informed by the decisions of the market. But I have a challenge to that thought. You know, the market's ever changing, and the market's adaptable, it's malleable. And with geopolitical issues, Trump being in office, Powell, playing the game of when to drop interest rates, I think there's too much carry anyways. I think people are just simply not going to recover in the way that they believe that they're going to recover. But that's the grim part. The good part is that the market is resetting. People will recover, and it'll just take some time.
And do you think that the borrowers, and do you think it's the same people that got rocked that will be bringing the market back? Like, these borrowers are willing to put their chips back in the market, and that they're going to be the ones to bring it back? Or do you think new players sort of step into this space just from what your experience is and what you're seeing?
So there are some players that are going to want to come back in, but it's a little bit of the same. And what I mean by that is older players that were new and had what I like to call uninformed optimism, and those now have informed pessimism. That's a line from Alex Hormozy for anybody that knows. He's a big entrepreneur in business. Now those old players in the game are now going to have to choose to be informed optimists in their business, right? So it went from uninformed optimist to informed pessimist to now informed optimist. That's going to be with those people.
That's definitely me. We're informed optimism, baby. Let's go.
Optimism, right? And then there's going to be the new players that are uninformed optimists, because they believe that the market has reset. They haven't lost yet. They don't have and wear those scars yet. So they're going to basically do the same thing, and it's going to get recycled. I think there's going to be a portion of the people that are new that are going to want to educate themselves and be close to individuals such as myself and you about what the market holds for the future. And those that do not are going to learn the lessons by playing in the market. I'm not saying that there's not going to be winners. I'm saying that there are going to be winners and there will be losers. And if you are a loser in that market in the future, understand that that is, the cycle of life in real estate and the cycle of business generally. So the speaking of business rings true that if you can win at losing, you'll always win.
Word up. Listen, I appreciate you for coming on, brother. I'll talk to you.
Thank you, brother.